Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Experience Maker Live Show. My name is Dan Gingiss, the Experience Maker, and I am so happy to have you here today. I'm going to start with a very quick promo, which I'm going to do, frankly, every week until we get to my book launch on September 14th. It is the Experience Maker, How to Create Remarkable Experiences that your customers can't wait to share. It is available now for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart.com, wherever you like to get your books. And if you go to the experiencemakerbook.com, we got some really special bonuses for pre-orders. All you got to do is give us your order number, and you will get 3 special bonuses sent to you instantly. So please check out the book. I think you will really, really enjoy it. Hey, speaking of really enjoying things, I have really enjoyed doing this show, and this is the 74th week now. 74 amazing guests, actually 73 so far, amazing guests on this show with no repeats. And a good buddy of mine early on told me, hey, Dan, listen, I'm not going to sign up to be a guest even though you asked me. Instead, what I want to do is I want to be there in case somebody cancels on you. And I said, oh, okay. I mean, you might have to wait a while. And he said, no, that's all right. That's cool. Well, guess what? Today's guest needed to reschedule at the last minute. And so I am bringing on this mystery guest, this guy that offered to show up whenever I needed him. And ladies and gentlemen, the man, the legend, here he is, Mr. Chris Strub. Hey, what's going on, Chris?
Well, I made the show 74 weeks later, Dan.
74 weeks. We didn't think you'd wait that long, but I appreciate you as always, buddy, being my most flexible friend. And here you are, and I'm very happy that you're here. How's it going?
Awesome. Thursday at noon. This is part of my weekly schedule. Dan is usually tuning in, watching on either LinkedIn and or Twitter, and hanging out with the fellas, the fans of Dan. And it's just an honor to be in front of the microphone and on camera here today. So I'm glad to spend some time here.
If I recall, you've got a little bit of experience being in front of the camera and on a microphone. You want to tell the audience what it is you do?
I do. So in between reading my Dan Gingiss books, I travel around the country, and I work with 24-hour fundraising days called Giving Days. So I'm wearing my hat from WYO Gives, which is a statewide giving day in Wyoming. That was July 14th. So just a couple weeks ago, I was in Cheyenne. And we do this on a recurring basis. I'll spend a full day with community foundations or other organizations in various communities, including St. Louis, including Gainesville, Florida, York, Pennsylvania, and one that's very near and dear to our collective hearts, Dan, Louisville, Kentucky, and help them use live streaming video to make the most of their fundraising experiences. So it's a lot of fun. It's a very niche down job. You and I have talked about it over the last, 8-10 years of our friendship here. But it's been a lot of fun, getting to help nonprofits, getting to do something that I truly love. And of course, occasionally getting to share a stage to speak with you around the country. So it's fun.
And we have gotten to do that, which is absolutely amazing. And, you mentioned, I'm going to bring up your website here as we are talking. You mentioned that you are able to do what you love. And I think that is so important because, if I asked almost anybody about Chris Strub, one of the first words that would probably come out would be passionate. And I always thought when I worked in corporate America that when I was passionate about something, that's when I was having the most fun. That's when I was doing my best work. And as we talk now about, people coming back to work for the first time in a while, et cetera, talk to me about your passion and how that leads you and how it makes you so good at what you do.
I've long believed, Dan, that if I'm going to do anything at all, I'm going to put 110% into it, which is why, took another quick shower, sprayed on the cologne, dancing around the apartment, turn on all the lights, get hyped up, rock and roll, and ready to go to be the guest on the show. That's just who I am. That's what I do. When I go speak, when I produce an event, when I go play intramural sports or go to the gym, when you see Chris Strub, you know that you're getting 110% of that effort every time. And the fun part, Dan, about riding this wave of being on the live streaming revolution. And we could talk for hours and hours about Meerkat and Periscope and sort of the changes in the live streaming space over the last, 6-7 years. It's really allowed me an avenue to be able to express that optimism and that energy and that positivity through the camera, whether it's through an iPhone that I might be carrying around on the road, a GoPro, or, here we are with our cameras plugged in our home studios, Dan, chatting with each other. Wherever you may see me, you're going to get 1,000% of my effort. And I really try and convey that through video, through all the different clients that I've had a chance to work with, and express to them that if they are similarly optimistic and energetic in what they express, they'll see similarly positive results.
Yeah. And I will tell you, folks, Chris is similarly passionate and energetic, even when he texts smack talk in our fantasy baseball league. I mean, like, he is all in on everything he does. And that's what makes him Chris. I think, as you were just saying that, I'm thinking about how it is the connection between somebody being passionate on the back end, let's say an employee or an owner of an entrepreneur like you. It passes through to the audience or to the customer or whoever it is. And, there's an old adage that a happy employee equals a happy customer. And I kind of think that you embody that, because I know that you bring that enthusiasm and passion to the organizations you work with. But then anybody that sees you feels that too, because you just exude that energy. And to me, there's a connection there with customer experience, which is, we got to get our employees passionate about what we're doing. We got to get them excited. We got to get them understanding what a good experience feels like, so that they can transfer that onto a customer. Is that a fair metaphor for you?
I think fostering a positive culture at your company is always going to be critical, from the top down. And now, Dan, you and I both work for ourselves, which is kind of nice to have that top-down approach in our own houses. Exactly. But I've always tried to be that guy, no matter what role I take on, to exude that positivity. But I've also, Dan, tried to push the limits. I always ask why with whatever project I'm involved in. And a common friend of ours, Ted Rubin, has always been a big advocate for empowering employees to be able to be the best advocates for their company, and specifically through social media. I've heard Ted talk, no pun intended, all about empowering and literally handing the microphone to your employees and letting them share the stories of why they enjoy doing what they do. And from there, you can really create an army of advocates for your brand. That's what I've tried to do as the Giving Day guy, is really try and be a vocal advocate for all of the nonprofits that I'm interviewing. And sometimes you really do need to try and hype them up and remind them, just how great the work that they're doing is. I find that that's almost the more valuable element of my work, Dan, is energizing people and reminding them how special they are, as opposed to plugging in the camera the right way or getting the ring light correct or the microphones. It's more about what's inside you and what drives you to do what you do. And I think ultimately that can lead to all sorts of business success from the top down.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to back up a little bit here, because this started with you a while back, and I have a book too, by the way. In fact, I have, I believe, copy number 1 of said book, 50 States, 100 Days, the book by Chris Strub. And this details your cross-country venture to all 50 states, where you worked with nonprofits in each state. And part of what you did was help them tell their story through the marvels of social media. And what I love so much about that is that you didn't just give them a fish, you taught them how to fish, right? And you taught them how to use social media to get their brand out and to get people talking about their brand, which of course is what I talk about and teach as well. Tell us a little bit about that trip and kind of how that maybe influenced what you're doing now with the Giving Days.
And it's really been a career-long evolution for me in terms of trying to better empower those whom I'm working with to share their stories. And I was very blessed to have a chance to work with you and your team in Louisville back in 2016. And that was my number one responsibility in working with Humana back that summer, was traveling around and working with different nonprofits and really diving deep into what they were doing on a daily basis and helping them explore the tools and better take advantage of the tools that they're already familiar with. But how can you best create a strategy using social media to share your stories? Now, the phrase social media has really become sort of synonymous with video and live video for me over the years, right? So we could talk about Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all these different channels. But for me, it starts with having the confidence and having a strategic approach and a creative approach to feeling comfortable on camera, understanding that your story and your words matter to those to whom you're speaking, and having the confidence to stand up and share that story. And, you know, Dan, we can talk all day long about the value of customer experience, but it's those who really identify that they have a need with your brand who want to hear everything that you have to say and want to connect with you. And that's kind of where this journey begins, I think, where the customer journey begins, is hearing from these organizations and understanding what they're able to provide, and then creating that connection where that experience can be refined and grown moving forward.
Yeah, I love it. And there's actually a case study in my new book about a company that we're both very familiar with, Charity Water, and how that organization, that nonprofit, made it a point to focus on the donor experience. Thank you for the double fisting there. That's amazing. To focus on the donor experience, because there's so many nonprofits that you send a donation to and they send you a receipt, and that's basically the extent of the relationship. And Charity Water has really spent a lot of time keeping their donors informed of the projects that they're supporting, of the progress. Whenever they open up a new well and they take videos of these folks around the world that have never seen clean water, seeing it for the first time, and the joy on their face. And you know what that does? It makes you want to pull out your wallet and donate more. And I think that donor experience is such an interesting piece of it. And what you're helping nonprofits do by telling their story is getting people excited about the organization. Like, I know you did some work with the Salvation Army. Everybody's heard of the Salvation Army. Probably everybody's put some coins in the kettle at some point in their life, but you helped tell their story a little bit more. There's the other book, Fight the Good Fight, or Fight for Good Tour, the book, Chris Strub. And there you are with your Salvation Army gear. But again, you sort of humanized that brand in a way that I don't think had been done before. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it's really important to remember both the actual services that are being provided by the organizations. And sometimes they like to keep the focus on that. But for me, I always remember, and Dan, you and I have run out of fingers and toes to count how many conferences we've been at together over the years. And the single most common refrain is that humans want to connect with other humans. And so for me, a lot of my work with nonprofits has been encouraging them to actually put a face on the work that they're doing. That can be easier said than done in certain verticals, in certain fields where the work is a little more private, or the services that are provided aren't really as open. But for most nonprofits, they've really, that I've worked with at least, they've seen a lot more success when they're able to really sit down and identify directly with those with whom they're communicating. And that's been a huge push, both with the giving days that we work with. They'll ask, hey, can we send a video of the work that we do? And it's like, yeah, that's fine. But we definitely want to bring you on camera to speak to you about why you do what you do. Explain it to us. Give us an opportunity to ask you those open questions. And also, just even outside of the giving days as well, creating these consistent streams of content where people can identify with the employees that are working on the ground. One of my favorite stories to tell is Prince Holmes from Youth Rebuilding New Orleans. if you want to go back to book number 1. And of course, I need to get you an updated copy, Dan. You've got the antiquated yellow copy. This is the updated version with the new forward and everything. But
I prefer to refer to it as vintage.
The vintage book.
Copy.
Exactly. But Prince is the executive director of Youth Rebuilding New Orleans. I just saw him last month when I was down there. And, he uses Instagram stories and Snapchat quite consistently to show the work that's being done. And when you go down to meet with YRNO, you're going to encounter Prince. You're going to set things up with him. And you're already familiar with that voice. Marcus Sheridan does a wonderful job of explaining this as well, about how with his pool company, he would ask his customers to watch a certain set of videos before he would actually come in and complete the sale. And he's got these remarkable numbers. Now, not so much in our fantasy football league, but when it comes to selling pools, he's the man, right?
Yeah.
So his customers would actually watch these videos before he would actually come in and ask for the sale. And they would walk in, or he would walk in and the couple would say, "That's the pool guy. Like, where do I sign?" Right. And he does, of course, a much better job of explaining the story than I do. But the point is the same, that when people are familiar with you, familiar with your brand, and familiar with your work, because they can watch you at home on their TV, on their computer, on their phone, you're a million steps ahead, and you've already started to establish that comfortable relationship that you need in order to complete whatever transaction you're hoping to do.
So you were an early adopter to all this live streaming stuff, and you mentioned Meerkat and some of the platforms that didn't last. I know you and I had a lot of fun on Blab for a while and all that.
We'll pour a little out for our Meerkat buddies. Yeah.
As we as the world went online last year and everybody learned how to Zoom and everybody learned how to be on camera, are you finding that maybe there's less pushback than when you went on your 50 states tour, where people were like, I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable about this? Do you find like today that maybe people are like, yeah, I mean, I may not love doing it, but I know how to do it, and so I'm a little more comfortable with it?
Without question. So when COVID first struck last, March, we'll say, February, pretend like it didn't exist when you and I were at Social Media Marketing World. We were just starting to see that those dominoes start to cascade a little bit. And I had to pivot working giving days. So generally I would travel to each community, go walk around with, the stick mics and interview everybody in person, go to their location. We had to crumple up that model, throw it out, and basically start from scratch with these virtual fundraising events. And I'm very grateful to the clients that I worked with, especially last spring, where it was still sort of that experimental phase where we didn't really know what to expect or how to go about doing virtual fundraising. It was always something that you kind of dipped your toe in a little bit, but of course the priority was, press the flesh, let's get together and we'll throw a party and here's your fundraiser. Unfortunately, here we are 16, 17 months later, we appear to be going once again in the wrong direction with COVID. And we're continuing to work through the process of staging virtual fundraisers. And the difference, Dan, from last March and April to today is completely night and day. Essentially every nonprofit now knows how to turn on the camera, turn on the microphone. There was a real big learning curve last year, like, oh, how do I, where do I sit? How do I turn the mic on? And now it's like everyone's been doing this their whole career almost. It's intrinsic to what we do. And now, Dan, I think the move is we need to empower all these organizations who are more comfortable being on camera to now think strategically and develop, more of these behavioral patterns of some of the creators that we're familiar with, to be able to engage directly with their audience, build a community, create content that is craveable, all those different patterns that we've been trying to teach on video for as long as we've been professionals. Now everyone is quickly realizing, oh crap, like this is what we need to do to succeed on video.
Well, and I do think it's, as we look for positives to take out of the pandemic, I think for what you do, that is one of them, is that, I remember your early days, you're going and saying to these nonprofits, hey, what you really should be doing is live streaming on Meerkat. And they're like, I don't know what live streaming is, and I don't know what Meerkat is, right? And now they don't know what Meerkat is anymore, but they understand the concept and have probably done it. And I think, that makes your whole role as the teacher of fishermen, of the creator of fishermen, so much more important, because once they can do it on their own and they can tell these stories, they're able to continue the work that you do even after, long after you leave. And I think that's interesting. The other thing is, I had a meeting with a potential client earlier this week, and I was talking to them about how they have such a fascinating product and such a fun product, and how unique that is, and that it's a competitive advantage in and of itself. Before you even get to customer experience, you have a product that stands out. I think with a lot of the nonprofits that you work with, that is also true. And if anything, I don't mean to minimize it, but their product is the people that they help. And so you bring this humanization in. It's almost a natural humanization. And I know in your book, you talk about, there's individuals, many individuals that you met throughout your tour that you'll remember forever, whether it was a little kid or it was an old lady or somewhere in between, that was either being helped by the organization or was a helper within the organization. And I think if I'm picking up what you're saying, this human piece, it is what everybody craves. It's such a key part of any experience, whether it's customer, donor, whatever experience. And I think what I'm saying, if I can come to a conclusion here, is that there is a certain advantage that some of the organizations that you work with have, because their product and their humanization is already built into what they do.
I think sometimes, at least in years past, maybe not so much now, people underestimate the importance and the value of being seen, and, as our buddy Mark Schaefer would say, being known, right? And Dan, in every presentation that I give, I use a slide where I talk about the 90-9-1 rule, that 90% of all content, not even nonprofit content, but all content on social media, people will consume, but they won't respond, they won't engage, they won't like, they won't, all the things that we ask people to do, they just won't, right? 9%, those are the ones who are going to actively engage with you. And then the 1%, for the sake of this example, are the Dan Gingisses and the Chris Strubs of the world, who are always out there creating content of their own. With the nonprofit space, Dan, it's even more stark, because people who need the services of nonprofits are also even less likely to comment and like, oh, here's a video about the food bank offerings. Well, if I need the food bank, Dan, I'm not going to go on and be like, this is such great content, exclamation point, exclamation, right? Like all those traditional mechanisms of expressing enthusiasm and support, it just doesn't happen for nonprofits. And so for me, my common refrain, Dan, is always to remind these nonprofits, to quote my good friend Joe Wilson, that we are all famous to a few people, that your message matters, that you're speaking to the people who are listening, but not necessarily engaging, commenting, sharing. And Dan, I just want to say that live streaming, in my opinion, it's not a magic button. There's nothing overtly different about live streaming than there would be to going out to like a chamber of commerce meeting, or appearing on the radio, or any of the other traditional mechanisms that we might be used to getting your name out there. The difference with live streaming is that it's something that we all can do for free, for the cost of having a device and having an internet connection. And we have the full control over what we want it to look like, to sound like, when we do it, where we do it, and why we do it. So to me, there's many, many advantages about using live streaming video that I try to espouse to these organizations on a continuous basis. My favorite use of live streaming video is actually bragging about how I am destroying Dan in fantasy baseball this week. If you can focus the camera there you go. There is the current scoreboard.
That the two categories that don't actually count yet, I'm winning, so we're actually at 4-4. Are you going to tell people that part? Or?
Hey, you scheduled the show for 12 p.m. on Thursday, not 12 p.m. on Sunday. So
okay. Well, I would add one more thing is that, one of the benefits of live streaming, like I do here on this show, is that when you're done, you have a video that you can use in other places like YouTube. You have the ability to strip out the audio and turn it into a podcast. You have the ability to transcribe it and turn it into a blog post. You have the ability to cut up that blog post into social media posts. And so, one half an hour interview with Chris Strub becomes tons and tons and tons of pieces of content that can last you for a while. I think the organizations that are figuring that out are realizing that's the true power of the live stream, is that it isn't just the half an hour. It's about what do you do with it after that. And I have found, I'll tell you, just being upfront, that I get far more eyeballs on the transcribed blog of these shows than I do in the live stream, right? But that's okay, because everybody consumes content differently. And there are some folks that scroll and scroll and scroll and watch videos all day long. And there's some folks old folks like me that still get a newspaper every day and want to read something, on the screen or physically. And so they're going to go to the blog. But the good news is that you can create all of that.
Well, Dan, I know we have a hard stop, so I'm going to give this to you in 60 seconds or less. I'm really proud of you for publishing this new book, The Experience Maker. I hope that you take that lesson you just mentioned a second ago and repurpose this. And if you're reading the blog recap of this, you also take this to heart. Reading this book is also going to be a great experience. I haven't read it yet. I have read Ann Hanley's introduction, which is marvelous. And she was a great guest on the show a couple months ago. But I actually like using Twitter, one of our favorite social media platforms, to create an experience out of reading books. So I encourage anyone who's reading this, if you want to connect with me on Twitter, it's at Chris Strub. The moment that Dan says, go ahead, because we've been timing it for the book release, I'm going to read through this chapter by chapter, and I'll actually live tweet the best little bits of the book. So if you want to connect with me there, I use the hashtag StrubReads, and I can't wait to add the latest Strub Reads thread to my library here, Dan, with The Experience Maker. So congratulations. I'm really proud of you. And buy the book.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, and appreciate your friendship. One last thing I want to leave the audience with. Chris and I met at a conference, not surprisingly, and we were sitting in an audience. We were watching a panel called Marketing to Millennials. And I turned to Chris because he was clearly a millennial, which I am not. And I said, does it strike you as odd that we are watching a panel called Marketing to Millennials and there are absolutely no millennials up there on stage? And yes, it did strike Chris as odd, and a friendship was born. But what I think is really critical about that moment, if I can hopefully not awkwardly bring it back to customer experience, is this is the concept of knowing your customer and of listening to your customer. How can you put 4 people on stage talking about marketing to millennials when you're not asking a millennial how they want to be marketed to, right? And that is how we create experiences, is we listen to our customers. We identify that Chris wants a different experience than Dan wants, and that's okay. We can do both. We can provide different experiences for them. So know your customer. If you don't feel like you know them, listen to them, ask them questions. If you ask for feedback, you will get it. Be prepared, because you're going to get good feedback and you're going to get tough to swallow feedback, but it's all a gift. It's all really useful, and it will all help you build a better experience. Mr. Strub, you are the man. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for waiting 74 episodes too. Your patience is unbelievable.
Hope it was worth the wait. We'll have to find you a new backup guy now. This isn't going to work.
I don't know what I'm going to do if next week cancels, right?
Yeah, now you're in trouble.
All right. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I want to introduce.
Go Cubs, go, brother.
Yes. I want to introduce next week's guest. We're going to welcome Tasha Bishop to the show. She's the Executive Vice President of Customer Success for a company called Podium, which I've been working very closely with. And Podium is in the messaging space, specifically the SMS space. And how do we talk to brands like we talk to our friends? We text. And they have a platform that allows companies to text with their customers. I think it's really, really interesting. I'm surprised that more companies aren't texting with their customers, although it did definitely enhance during the pandemic. Again, I am Dan Gingiss. I am the Experience Maker, customer experience speaker, author, podcaster, and coach. Awesome to have you here on the show. We're here every week, Thursdays, noon Eastern. Tell your friends, and we'll see you next week on the Experience Maker live show.